fundraisers. And in this past year, we've seen the benefits of virtual events as we've adapted to an online world. But where do we go next? And I'm sure this is a question you guys are all thinking about right now, especially as we get into the fall season, which is such a busy time for fundraising. But I'm going to share with you what we're calling the 4 modern event types that will work with any of your upcoming fundraisers and combine the best of both worlds from virtual and in person. So I'm not going to wait and make you wait till the very end to hear them. This is what they are. 1, in-person events with virtual fundraising elements. 2, in-person events with a live stream component. 3, in-person with remote virtual experiences. And 4, a purely virtual event. By the end of this session, you're going to walk away with clear next steps on how you can execute any of the event types that work best for your next fundraiser. And we've got an amazing roadmap event guide that you can also download through the QR code on the screen, or we've got a team that's going to throw it in the chat for you as well. But to back it up just a little bit, I'm Rebecca. I've had the privilege of working at Trellis for the last 2 years supporting our charities with their fundraising events. First solely in person, and in the last year as we've transitioned to solely virtual. And now as we look at a combination of both through the 4 new event types. And today I want to share with you what we're learning and seeing in the nonprofit world, especially through my work with Trellis and with the hundreds of organizations I've supported with their fundraising events and campaigns. And then to back it up just a little bit more, Trellis is an all-in-one fundraising events platform. We help charities, nonprofits, and foundations fundraise virtually, in person, and everything in between. We've supported organizations across North America with everything from ticketing and donations, silent and live auctions, raffles, and even live streaming their events. But beyond being a fundraising platform or a technology platform, we want to do a lot more for the organizations we support. We want to be industry experts and leaders in the new ideas and new ways that you can increase your fundraising success. And I'm not here alone today. Emily and Zoe from my team are also here, and they are in the chat. So as I'm talking, if you've got questions, throw them in there and they would be happy to answer them right away, or they'll mark it and we can save it for Q&A at the end as well. So here's where we're going. First, I want to talk about the benefits of virtual events. The past 16 months were really hard, and you guys all know that, but there were some amazing lessons that we can take and move forward with. Then let's remember the benefits of in-person and why we are all so excited to be going back there. And finally, I want to talk about the 4 new event types to springboard you into your next fundraisers and help you stand out, raise more money, engage your donors better, and build seamless donor experiences. And again, this guide will dive into everything that I'm talking about a little bit further. So if you have your phone next to you, pull it out, scan that QR code, and you can download it there. So just to rewind a little bit, earlier this year, me and my team sat down to try and understand where the future of fundraising events were going to better support the organizations we work with. And as you can guess, we had no idea where to start. So we actually started by talking. We surveyed hundreds of charities, industry experts, and donors, and looked at hundreds of fundraisers to better understand where the industry is going and how we can support organizations too. All of these stats I'm about to share with you come from these learnings. And to take it even further, we've created that new guide I just kept mentioning that summarizes all of our key findings, puts it into some actionable steps, highlighting the 4 event types that we're going to talk about later today. So here's what we found. 60% of charities did not meet their fundraising goals in 2020. I want to look at why and how you can avoid making the same mistakes. We found 92% of charity and industry experts believe virtual events are worth keeping. And let's talk about how you can make virtual a really great experience and avoid the Zoom fatigue that we are all feeling. And lastly, 76% of donors are expecting virtual events next year. I'll share how you can do them really well and how you can make them a fundraising success for your organization. But before we go any further, I want us to know a little bit more about who's joining us in the room. So we've got a poll question, and if our amazing Charity Village team wouldn't mind pulling it up, I want to know, for those of you that are planning a fundraiser in the fall, what does it look like? In person, virtual, hybrid? Are you still not sure? And that's okay if you aren't, but I'd love to know what you think.
It's great. Rebecca, I see people are voting on their screen. I think we've got just about the majority have voted now, so I'm just going to close and show the results.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And I'm really curious to hear what you guys are saying. Okay, completely unsure was our top answer. I totally get it. I feel like we all kind of thought at the beginning of this year that we're like, okay, we're gonna go virtual. It's gonna be a virtual only year. And then the summer's hitting and things are opening up. So it's like, what do we do now? Is it too late to pivot? Do we stay the same? Like, what's going on? That's awesome. Okay, 26% of you guys are going completely hybrid. I love that. Hopefully what I share in a few minutes here is gonna give you some amazing ideas. Completely virtual, I'm hearing that a lot. A lot of people are planning completely virtual too, so that's really consistent. These numbers are all super consistent with the people I'm talking to as well. And then a few of you brave souls are going completely in person, which I love. That's awesome. Okay, and then we've got another question for you. So first I want to dive into virtual events. So if we can pull up the next poll question, we know that virtual events were key to succeed in 2020. But what about moving forward? Where do you think the industry is headed, and what types of events will allow you to keep hitting your goals? So do you think virtual events will outlive the pandemic?
Fantastic. So everyone can just go ahead and vote on their screen once again. And great. Rebecca, I'm going to close and share this again because we've got the majority here.
Amazing. I love it. Wow, you guys are so quick. Okay, 83% of you said yes. That's awesome. I agree. I think that, and we're going to talk about this in a second, but there have been a ton of benefits that we've seen from doing virtual. And I think that there's some really good lessons we can take. But I'm also understand the 7% of you guys that said no, because it has been really hard. And it's looked really different from organization to organization. And so, yeah, I think we're going to have to keep playing it by ear, but I have a feeling that virtual will outlive the pandemic. So we'll see what happens. We'll see if my hunch is right. But that's awesome. Thank you guys all so much for participating there. So if we just jump back on this side, and hopefully you guys can still see my screen here. Well, let's dive first into virtual events. So our survey showed that 92% of charity professionals and industry experts believe virtual events are worth keeping after the pandemic. So I think we were just at 83%, so pretty similar. But yes, the large majority are planning for virtual events to continue. And we wanted to take that a step further because that doesn't really tell us a whole lot. So we asked our charities and industry experts why they believe virtual events are here to stay. And these were some of the top reasons that we heard. One, costs and time saved. On average, charities spent half the time planning and executing their virtual events and half of their usual in-person budget, which is significant, as you guys all know. Two, ease of execution. Virtual events are now just a new tool in the charity toolbox. Virtual events, they take less time and money and can easily be produced in addition to other yearly events. Increased geographical reach. We are no longer bound to geographical barriers, and I hope that some of you guys were able to take advantage of that with your fundraising in the past year. But the impact of this is actually so significant. Not just for ticket sales and donations, we've seen organizations facilitate nationwide raffles and silent auctions, connect with donors beyond their local communities, and raise more money than they have in years prior, just because they were no longer bound to the people that live in their single community. They just had the whole world at their disposal for fundraising and reach. Next, it was cheaper for donors. So the lower cost to charities and the increased potential donor reach actually meant that organizations ended up raising the same amount or more. But for donors, they were able to save money. They weren't paying for a lot of the extra pieces of an event that you would usually pay for when it's in person. Also, less manpower required. Since the pandemic, according to an Imagine Canada study, 1/3 of charities in Canada have seen reductions to paid staff through layoffs. However, virtual events also don't require the same amount of staff and volunteers to execute. And finally, virtual fundraising elements. On average, events included in the study that had more than 3 virtual fundraising elements raised double that of organizations with 2 or less. And this also created new opportunities for people to engage donors that actually didn't attend the event but were still able to contribute. So we're going to dive really deep into like what does this look like in a little bit here, but just to kind of help you wrap your mind around it, virtual fundraising elements would be like online tickets, donations, silent and live auctions, raffles, 50/50s, a fund a need, all of those different ways that you can raise more during your fundraisers. Not only did we talk to our industry experts and our charities about why they loved virtual, but we also talked to our donors. And I mean, for the organizations that were able to figure out how to do virtual, they plan to keep an element of that moving forward. And I'm sure that's pretty similar to a lot of you guys here. But let's also hear from our donors and some of the reasons why they've loved it too. While donors love and really enjoy the in-person experience, donors loved being able to attend from the comfort of their own home. They loved being able to easily check in on a virtual silent auction and make donations on a credit card. And they loved that they were able to see speakers that otherwise may not have been able to participate in the event. Donors also contributed just as much, if not more, virtually, which is crazy. So we can see that organizations that took the virtual plunge hit their goal in 2020. We know virtual events will be here to stay, and we're seeing the excitement around that from charities, industry experts, and donors. But how do we make sure to maximize the fundraising potential of virtual events? So I mentioned at the beginning that 60% of organizations did not hit their fundraising goals in 2020. And so we took a really good look at that to see why they didn't and how you guys can avoid the same mistakes. So here is what we found. And again, don't worry if you're not taking notes and you want to, all of this stuff is in the guide and we'll make sure that there's lots of opportunities for you to grab that guide too. But here's what we learned. Charities that raised less, they made the switch to virtual last minute. Given the urgency, this is actually super understandable, but not giving yourself enough time to plan your events can be detrimental to hitting your fundraising goals. 2, they removed a crucial fundraising element. Even when planning virtual events, it's important to make strategic considerations about the best approaches to moving forward with your fundraising. In the report, we share which fundraising elements are the most popular and effective for virtual fundraisers. 3, they felt donors were less engaged. Our surveyed donors have told us that event programming and entertainment is key for them to participate in a fundraiser. What can you do and what are you doing to engage your donors in this new setting? What are you going to do to make it worth sticking around till the very, very end for? And 4, they felt they didn't have sufficient marketing. With the switch to virtual, it's really important to consider new opportunities that exist with marketing your events. We're seeing organizations have success with network or influencer marketing and newsletters and social media. The challenges and the reasons that caused organizations to raise less in 2020 no longer exist. And as we think about events moving forward, with a more strategic approach to virtual events, we actually expect organizations will be able to raise more than organizations that are staying with just in-person or just one option. Okay, we've just done a good deep dive into virtual events. And if you have questions about anything I mentioned, please again, throw it in the chat because we would love to answer those and the team can answer them right away or save it to the end. But I do want to move over to in-person. So Robin, if you wouldn't mind throwing up another poll question. The question this time is, do you think in-person events will come back in full force post-pandemic?
Awesome, Rebecca, we've got that up on the screen now, and everyone, if you want to go ahead and have your say, just leave it for another moment here. Great, okay, I think that's the majority. So Rebecca, I'm just going to share this with you.
Perfect. And I see it's loading, so we'll just give it a second.
I can also let you know it's, so we've got 52% saying yes.
Okay.
And 33% saying no. and 15% are, I guess, in the middle with a who knows.
Perfect. That's so interesting because when we did this survey, we had really different results. And so I'll show you what those results were in a second here. But for the 52%, sorry, of you that said yes, yeah, I think you're right. I think that in-person events will make a comeback. Will it be full force? I actually don't know either. I think that we're seeing a lot of the benefits of virtual and a lot of the in-person benefits, and if we can marry them, then yeah, maybe. But what does that really look like? Who knows? For the 33% of you that said no, why? If you want to throw it in the chat, I would love to know. I'd love to know why you think that. That's okay. Yeah, I'm just curious what you think. And then who knows? I'm also very much equally in your camp too, of like who actually knows. And I feel like just when we think we figured out COVID and the direction of this world, it changes. So we'll just have to wait and see, I think. But awesome. Let's jump over and take a look at what we saw in our survey as well. So super interesting hearing what you guys thought. From our survey, we found that 93% of organizations and industry experts believe in-person events are worth going back to when it's safe to do so. So that number is a lot higher. So either the group that we talked to were just really optimistic, or they just hadn't felt the summer yet and seen some of the changes yet that we're experiencing right now. In our survey, we also talked to Lane the auctionista, and they said that there will be charities whose donor base will crave in-person. In-person will not look the same, but will need to be reinvented, and I love that. How we engage our donors moving forward will change, but we'll jump more into this in just a second here. So why even go back then? I mean, we just talked about a ton of reasons why virtual events were amazing, and although very hard, which we can all agree on, there were some clear benefits that I think we can all see. But let's talk about the benefits of in-person. So number one, peer pressure. Donors are keen to get back into the room, and I think you guys should be too. And one of the main reasons is because of social peer pressure. Donors feel when they are asked to give in front of others, they give more, and it actually helps increase the amount you're able to raise. Two, engagement. Engagement with donors and attendees looks different when we're virtual, and we all know and feel that. If I was in person right now, we would be having probably a very different kind of conversation than we are over a webcam. And number three, connection. The ability to make meaningful connections with donors has also shifted and become more challenging with virtual events. And then finally, networking. Donors and organizations alike are both really looking forward to being able to network in person when we're back. So at the end of the day, where does that leave us, and what do we do next? And as the world continues to change, so will the popularity between virtual and in-person events. So with that in mind, let's officially meet the 4 new events that will take over in the years to come. We're calling them the new kids on the block. They're the 4 types of post-COVID fundraising events. Okay, our name is still a work in progress, so if you've got a better name, please throw it in the chat because I can't keep saying that title because it's just really long. I'd really appreciate the help. But this is who they are. It's the events that are going to blend the in-person and the virtual elements that we've all loved and seen over the past however many years. So let's talk about the benefits that we just mentioned with virtual events. Affordability for donors, virtual fundraising elements, diverse speaking and entertainment, and with increased geographical reach, donors can participate from anywhere. And in-person events, pleasing our donors looking forward to in-person events, creating positive social peer pressure with donors, increased engagement, more opportunities for meaningful connection, and the ability to network once again. What I love about these new events is we can capitalize on the best of virtual and best of in-person simultaneously. Affordability, online fundraising elements, speakers and entertainment of a different caliber or beyond our local community, and increased donor reach. And the ability to meet donor requests, engage, connect, and network with our attendees. How we approach our next events will look different based on our organizations and the needs of our attendees, but one thing remains true. The old pen and paper event is done, and honestly, I don't think it could ever really come back. But as we think about our 4 new events, we can think about them kind of on a scale from in-person all the way over to online, with varying levels of engagement on either end of the spectrum. I'll challenge you to think about what is the best option for your donor base as we dive into each of these events individually. So let's start with our first one, in-person with virtual fundraising. Even though this event is still in person, it's now new and improved. It's not the same event we had in 2019. Here are some of the benefits of this event. With virtual fundraising elements, you can streamline giving for your event and increase your fundraising potential as you engage donors that maybe can't attend your event. You've got that in-person connection and engagement our donors are all craving, and it's so easy for your donors to participate leading up to and during your event with the use of technology. And you can kind of see on the side here, we've got that in-person gala experience. We've got the tables, the lights, the stage, all of that. But I'm also there on my phone and I'm continuing to engage online or virtually throughout the night. So what exactly does it look like? Donors go online and they buy tickets and make a donation to your organization. You open up your silent auction early to allow guests to bid in the weeks before the event. On the day of the event, guests come in person and check in and enjoy that in-person connection. But you make it really easy for them to keep giving. There's QR codes next to the screen so people can scan and participate in the live auction or your funded need just from their phone. And while you still have that silent auction items on a table, there's just a simple QR code guests can scan to bid. Not only does this save you from trying to collect all of those papers and pens and money at the end of the night, it also saves your donors from running back and forth to the table all night as well to keep bidding on items. And for your donors that can't attend in person, they can still engage and give to your cause because it's all online. Online ticketing, donations, and a silent auction leading up to the event. Not incorporating virtual fundraising elements is a complete missed opportunity in 2021. For your one big donor that can't attend in person, this is your way to still engage them and let them participate in your fundraiser without even being there. Next, let's talk about in-person with a live stream audience. Like the last event, this event is in person, except we add a camera at the back of the room so virtual attendees can join in too. And here are some of the benefits of this one. An increased geographical reach. This was one of the top benefits of virtual fundraising, and you can still make it virtual again. Invite physically distanced attendees to still participate from the comfort of their home. Ease of donor participation leading up to the event, as everything is online and giving is easier. 3, you still have in-person and engagement and connection that we love. And 4, you're now appealing to a wider donor base, increasing your potential reach and the awareness of your organization. So here's what it looks like. Like the last event leading up to the fundraiser, donors are online getting tickets, but this time you see a couple different ticket types, some in person and some virtual only. Once they've bought tickets, they can keep participating in the other elements of your fundraiser. Now it's the day of the event, so you're hosting your in-person event like before, but this time you set up a camera facing the stage to stream in guests that can't attend or don't want to attend in person. Maybe you've got donors that couldn't afford your ticket price or tried to buy tickets after you sold out, or they're just not close enough to attend in person. You're now engaging this new audience that drives and increases the amount you're able to raise. And as your fundraising elements are all online, donors at home can participate in the auction, raffles, and fund and aid in real time, just like the attendees in the room. Again, if you've got 2 or 3 big donors that can't attend in person that night, you can still make it fun, welcoming, and engaging for them so they can continue to give to your cause, this time just virtually. Next, it's in person with remote virtual experiences. This event is perfect for organizations with a significant donor base outside of their local community, organizations with a regional, provincial, or a national reach. It's really similar to the in-person and live stream event, but it's 2 curated experiences for the different donor bases. So here are some of the main reasons why we love it. It appeals to a wider donor base as everybody has a catered experience based on how they are watching. You're creating two amazing donor experiences so you can engage people in a totally different way. And finally, donors can connect and network with others in person if they're joining you in the room. And seeing it in real life, this is kind of what it would look like. So your donors go online, they buy tickets for the different ways they can enjoy the event. You've got a VIP in-person experience, you've got a watching virtually at home experience, or maybe even a watch party experience they can buy tickets for. Next, donors can continue to engage leading up to the event with donations, buying raffle tickets and items like a community cookbook or bidding on auction items, and everybody gets to do this together. On the day of the event, guests receive a very different experience based on the ticket they purchased. So first, let's talk about our in-person attendees. They come into your your in-person event, and it's this beautiful, intimate experience with engaging speakers and entertainers right in front of them. And virtual attendees enjoy an equally curated experience for them, with a mix of high-quality pre-recorded and live elements. And throughout the night, guests can come together and then go back to their exclusive experiences. So while your in-person guests are encouraged to get up and go visit the bartender for a drink, virtual attendees at home are watching a bartender teach them how to mix their drinks from home. While an engaging speaker is presenting to attendees in person, virtual attendees are watching the exact same talk. It was just pre-recorded in a high-quality studio beforehand. And when the giving moments come, all attendees join together to give simultaneously. They're all bidding on the same live auction items together, or all participating in a fund and need at the same time, and watching their names pop up in an honor roll right next to one another as if it were real time. The organizations that we're supporting doing this type of event this year have some really cool plans. I'm actually really excited to go and see kind of how it looks and how they coordinate the entire thing. One of them is actually a national organization, and they're planning a 500-person in-person experience. So they can really engage and really create a beautiful and memorable night for all of their in-person attendees. But they've got more attendees coming from chapters across the country, which will all be joining virtually. They've curated events that are going to be running simultaneously, which will allow them to engage all of their donors, regardless of how they choose to participate, in an event that's going to be engaging, welcoming, and most importantly, making it really easy for their donors to give. For that organization in particular, they've got some really big local donors that are going to love that in-person experience. But they've also got some really big donors that they want to really connect with that will be able to enjoy the event virtually and still feel compelled to give through those heartwarming stories and moments, and again, that really high quality experience they're going to deliver. And our last one, a purely virtual event. So maybe for your organization, you've seen the benefits of virtual events as they relate to your organization, and you actually have no desire to go back, which is great. Instead of creating a high quality donor experience for all of your participants to enjoy remotely, and you can create a really cool moment that everybody can kind of come together with. So taking all the learnings we've had from virtual, we can continue to reiterate and improve the experience to further engage and delight our donors online. But let's be clear, this is not just a Zoom call. This is a lot more. So these are some of the benefits: cost and time saved, ease of execution, increased geographical reach, cost savings for donors, less manpower required. And although you may have done a virtual event in 2020, it doesn't have to look the same anymore. Now guests are online, engaging in your event fundraising elements before the big day. They come back to your fundraising page on the day, but this time, instead of seeing tickets, they're able to watch the live stream right there. There's a chat feature letting your donors connect with one another, a thermometer and a donor ticker showing how close you are to hitting your fundraising goals. And throughout the night, there's new ways for you to engage. For giving, you've got a virtual fund in need, a live auction, a raffle, a silent auction. And beyond fundraising, you've got a handful of other engaging experiences for your attendees. Maybe you surprise guests watching the program on their doorstep with a gift basket. You keep it a complete surprise so you can capture their shock as they see you on their TV walking up their front doorsteps. Or maybe you've got a local winemaker who's going to offer a virtual wine tasting to all attendees. And as they enjoy their wine, a local restaurant has stepped up to provide some take-home meals for them to enjoy and kind of pair the meal together. Whatever you do, make it engaging and make it worth participating in. And I think a really cool benchmark you can work towards is this something that my donors are going to want to talk about on Monday morning with their friends at work? And so these event types that we've just worked through allow you to engage your donors on a spectrum from largely in person to purely online. But to determine which event is right for you, I think you should ask yourself some of these questions. 1, how do I expect most attendees to participate? How do I expect my key donors to participate? How much time and resources does my team have to put towards these events? And where do we think our donors will find the most value? Whatever type of event you do, you're going to have to ask yourself these questions, and there's really no right or wrong answer. It's just kind of finding out what's best for you guys. And don't worry if you didn't write down those questions that I just mentioned. You can also grab them in the guide. But where do we go from here? So now I've just thrown a lot your way, and so the big question left is, what does it take to succeed? As you guys know, fundraising has just changed, and we know that as vaccines continue to roll out and the world continues to open up, things will continue to shift again. But what I love about these 4 new fundraising types that we just talked about is they're going to help us outlive the next crazy change or curveball we face as an industry. Yes, some of them are more in person and some are more virtual, but being on a spectrum, as things change and as things adapt on a day-to-day basis, we can equally adapt and change our plans to match what the industry is doing and what the world is doing. So your kind of top 3 ways that you can succeed. 1, create a seamless donor experience. Using the approaches we talked about, make your donor experience stand out. Before the event, make it easy and fun. Have tickets, raffle tickets, and the silent option all open and all online. On the day of the event, make it easy for your donors to chat, donate, and bid while watching a live stream if they're virtual, or really easy for them to engage with friends in the room all while doing it on their phone. And create an engaging live stream with creative and entertaining elements. But don't forget to also mix in those heartfelt giving moments too. And as we just talked about, give your donors options to participate, being in person or virtual, depending on their preference. As we discovered in our questions too, we're all kind of a little bit all over the map as to what's going on next. And I mean, a lot of us said that we still don't know what we're even going to do as an organization and where the industry is going. And so our donors are feeling the same way. And how can you make sure that whatever option you give them, they feel welcome and they feel comfortable to join what works best for them? And then lastly, increase the amount of fundraising elements you include to appeal to your entire audience, and even your donor base that may not be attending at all. So first, remember that this is actually a fundraising event, so it's okay to ask your donors to give, but when you ask them to give, make it simple and all in one place to increase their chances of wanting to participate and support your cause. As I mentioned at the beginning, our stats are showing organizations that include 3 or more fundraising elements in their event raise double of those that have 2 or less. Not having multiple fundraising elements in 2020 will be a missed opportunity for your organization. And again, this can be a whole mix of things: tickets, donations, silent or live auctions, raffles, selling items, t-shirts, cookbooks, hats, whatever, a fund in need or a capital campaign, and then also like a raffle or 50-50. Okay, I just shared a ton of insights and ideas right now, but kind of here are some of the next steps that you guys can take. First is use the QR code on the side screen here, or if we can also get that link in the chat, and you guys can download the report, which has all of the insights I've just shared around the 4 event types and how you can apply them to your next fundraiser. Then again, you're going to want to keep asking yourself a lot of questions. Ask yourself, like, what have we done in the past with our events that we really liked and want to keep doing? What do we want to improve, or what do we want to make sure we actually bring back? And then, like us, don't be afraid to talk to your donors. Ask them about what they're most excited about and where they want to go from here too. Remember, this is an experience for them, and so hearing their voice and getting their opinion is going to help you make better decisions too. And remember to create an inclusive experience with plenty of ways to give. Find yourself tools that will accommodate a full range of fundraising elements virtually. And then next, think about what your events should look like now that you've gained this insight. If you want to create an event that stands out, you're going to want to implement a lot of the ideas that I just shared. And lastly, as you think about the events, connect with our team. Emily and Zoe, they're just about to throw a link in the chat to book a demo with our team at Trellis. On the call, we would love to actually talk about you and your organizations instead of me doing all the talking, and hear what are you planning or what are you doing, and seeing if there's any ways we can support you. Like I said, we've supported hundreds of organizations in the past however many years, and as our organizations have moved from completely in-person to virtual, and now mixing the two of them with these 4 event types, we've kind of seen it all. And so at the very least, come jump on a call, get some ideas, and take that back to your organization. But that was a lot, and I would love to leave it here and open it up for questions.
That's great, Rebecca. And we've got lots of questions coming in. So to all of our participants, please keep them coming, and we're going to get to as many as we can today. So Rebecca, let's kick things off with, how can silent auctions work if you're holding a hybrid event?
Totally. Oh, that's such a good question. Yes. So what we're seeing organizations do is open up a silent auction about 2 weeks before the event. That's actually a trend we really started seeing with virtual or completely virtual events, is having it open so people can start bidding and participating. And as you know, people usually buy tickets like a week before the event. So we're kind of catching them at that same time too. Then you're going to keep all of your bidding online, and you're going to allow people to engage that way. When they bid online, they can still see pictures of your items too, and so they know what it looks like or what it is. So if I'm doing a hybrid event, my virtual attendees are bidding on their phone, they're seeing the pictures, they're able to do it all in one place. For my attendees in person, they can still do the exact same thing, sit at their table and bid on their phone, or maybe you have your silent auction items on a table like we did for in-person events in the past, and instead of getting a pen and paper and getting them to write down their names, have a QR code or have a link that they can go to so that they can go back and continue bidding online again.
That's great. And maybe sort of a part 2 of that question, what's the best way to have virtual guests bid in a live auction in real time?
Ooh, this is a good question too. I'm gonna go back a couple slides here because I think I have a picture on my screen that might help. So when it's a hybrid event or a purely virtual event or a purely in-person event, it's gonna be kind of the same thing. And so without just completely selling Trellis, which I'm going to do anyways. One of the things that we've created is a live auction platform, and so donors can actually use our platform to, similar to the silent auction, bid on their phone or engage that way too. And so I'm not going to pretend to do it, but you're going to have an auctioneer that's going to be able to talk to the items, get people excited, call up their names, and be able to real time see who's bidding or who's participating so that they can thank those people and kind of keep the engagement going. And because again, all of my attendees are just participating on their phone or whatever device they're using, it's all really easy for in-person guests and virtual guests to do it together. Or if you're doing purely in person, they're all sitting in a room on their phone. Purely virtual, they're all sitting at home on their phone.
Great. Okay, let's move on to sponsorship. How can sponsors be involved and recognized virtually in a way that they would have been with an activation or on-site signage at an in-person event?
Totally, yeah. So I think one of the things that you guys can think about is having your online event become the venue. And so when we treat the online experience as our venue, we can actually go back to a lot of the similar things we've done in the past. So maybe for my online event, it kind of looks like what you guys can see on my screen here. And right on top of where my speaker is on the left-hand side of the screen, I've got their logos just lined up in the bottom. So that would be similar to that signage we would have on the stage that has all their logos that are there the whole time. And you can do different elements like that, but I'd also challenge you to think about how you can engage your donors differently than how we've done it in the past. I'll be honest, when I go to an event and I see some logos on the wall, I don't really tend to put two and two together that they've sponsored. But what about if we actually get them to engage in your event? So it's an online event and you decide you're going to do a surprise visit to one of your attendees at home. Get your sponsor to go with you. Get them to be the one to provide that item. And if you came to me and said that we're going to have the local bank that's sponsoring our event do a surprise visit, offer this really sweet gift basket to 2 or 3 of our guests, and have this exciting moment, that's something I'm going to tell my colleagues about when I go back to work on Monday. Like, I'm excited about that, and I'm going to remember that sponsor and the way they're participating. That's kind of more like day of event stuff, but on the leading up to the event and as you're selling tickets and things like that as well, highlight people on your fundraising page. Highlight them when they're buying tickets, have their logos there, or highlight them for the silent auction or live auction items that they're presenting as well.
Wonderful. And we've had quite a few questions come in about engaging and welcoming different generations, especially baby boomer and older. So we've got that sort of as a general question, and then a couple of follow-up questions around how to simplify online activations for folks that aren't as tech savvy and maybe an alternative to the QR codes.
Oh, good question. Yes. Yeah, I said the word QR code a lot, and that's not always the easiest, especially for some of our older donor bases. And so I would think about and actually like footstep your event or walk through your event as if you were an attendee. So start at the very beginning and maybe put on your hat of like, I'm going to be this particular donor that we know struggles with technology. And start with the link. Does the link work for them? And just walk through the whole thing. I would say try to avoid as many places that you're asking them to navigate to throughout the event. So, or leading up to the event and then also on the day of. If you can have your tickets and donations and silent auction in one place, that's only one place for them to remember and one link we need to send them or one QR code we need to send them. Same with on the day of the event. See how easy you can make it. If you can have your live stream on the same site that I just went and bought my tickets and donations and bid on my silent auction, like that is a big check in my box of like a really easy donor experience. So really think about that. Think about your donor base in practice as them. Think about what you can do to simplify, but also as you're talking to fundraising platforms, like ask them what they do and how they can engage their donors that maybe aren't as familiar with technology. Over like wearing my Trellis hat now, people ask me that all the time. They're like, well, how can I make it easy for my donors? And I can walk them through exactly what we do to support older donor bases and how we've designed what we've created to make it easy. But whatever platforms you're using, ask those same questions and try and find one that you think is going to work best for your particular donor base.
That's great, Rebecca. And I think you're calling out there too of really knowing your donor base, because we've had some comments coming in as we're talking about this issue saying, hey, our baby boomers are super tech savvy. And then we've got some other folks saying only 50% of our donor base actually has a smartphone. So lots of variation there for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so is there an average length of time for a live event to keep participants' attention?
Yes, definitely. We recommend doing your event for 60 minutes, so an hour at most. We've seen everything from 45 minutes to an hour long. I was actually just chatting with somebody the other day that they do a weekly seminar, and they said that they noticed that after 23 minutes, people dropped off, and so they've switched to only doing 23 minutes. And so, again, I would say watch what your donors are doing. Typically, your gala is going to be a one-time, like a once-a-year experience. So we may not have as much of that background info to pull from, but I'd say stick with the 1 hour mark. We're seeing a lot of success with that number, and it gives you enough time to get everything in that you want to, but still make it short enough that you haven't completely lost attention.
Excellent. And how about your suggestions for making a full live program engaging for the virtual audience as well?
Yeah, definitely. Good questions. Yeah, so I think really thinking about your donor base, and I love that you just mentioned this too, Marina. It looks like you guys really know who you have in your audiences when you do events, which is great, and that's such a powerful piece of information to hold on to. So think about who they are. Some of you mentioned that you've got a really tech-savvy baby boomer group that always attends your events and supports you guys. So maybe doing something that they can participate online, if that's like a virtual game that they can all do, if we've got a small group that they might really enjoy. Or for some of you, you've mentioned or you've realized that your donor base typically has a really good time just having a party kind of experience at your in-person galas. Think about how can you create that at home? What kind of music or entertainment do we have? You know, how many times do we ask the bartender to come up? Whatever it is, I would say really think about your donor base. We've seen such a big mix from virtual dance classes, beer tastings, virtual cooking classes, all the way to like a virtual painting pottery kind of class that we've seen people host. And so you can really do anything and get super creative, but start by knowing who's in the audience and who's going to be watching.
Great. And let's move into costs. So now we're throwing back to the 4 types that you were outlining. Are types 2 and 3 more expensive than in-person or 100% virtual?
Good question. It really depends on how you choose to facilitate them. Our type number 3, and I'll just go back a slide so you guys can see what they are again as a reminder. Our type number 3, in-person with remote virtual experiences, will probably be our most expensive option just because we're creating a really curated, really fun in-person experience, as well really investing in that virtual experience. But again, the type 3 event of remote with virtual experiences is geared more towards organizations with a larger regional, national, or provincial reach, and so they tend to have a bit more budget for that. Our in-person with virtual fundraising and our in-person with a live stream audience will honestly work out to probably be about the same cost. Really, the difference between the two of them is in your second event, you've just got a live stream audience that's attending as well. And yes, you may have to pay to have a camera or have that renting that entire setup, but you're also now increasing the amount you're able to raise. A purely virtual event, we've seen that people are saving about 50% of the cost compared to what they've done for an in-person event. So again, it will be a cheaper option, but instead of think about how you can reinvest that money to make it a stronger experience. So maybe last time it was just a Zoom call. How can you step it up? How can you get some pre-recorded or more high quality and high engagement elements in there, which tend to cost more? So I totally did not answer your question, whoever gave that question. But yeah, it's really going to be dependent on the experience that you're trying to create. But yeah, I'd say number 3 is probably your most expensive.
Perfect. And that kind of leads into also question about the price difference between running a virtual and an in-person event. And I think you just sort of briefly covered that. Do you want to expand on that a little?
Yeah, I'd just say that, yeah, in person, we kind of know generally what that's going to cost. I mean, all of you, I'm sure, have done at least one in-person event before COVID began. And if you've done any purely virtual events in the last 12 months or even before that, you know that the costs are just different. Again, in person, you're paying for the venue, the catering, the staff or volunteer to be there. But virtual, we just have different costs. We're still paying for our virtual venue, whatever platform we're hosting with, or all of those other costs. And so, yes, virtual tends to be cheaper, but it's just different in terms of what that looks like and how we're spending money.
Mm-hmm. And if we flip that around, maybe we could talk about whether there's a price difference for virtual and in-person events in terms of the ticket prices.
Yes, great questions. Wow. In-person events, yes, your ticket price will typically be higher. Again, you've just got more costs that you're kind of covering for. So the venue, the speakers, the food or beverages or whatever other elements or value your donors are receiving. Purely virtual events, your costs are lower because your costs for all of those things are also equally lowered. what we're typically seeing is in-person events will be a cost plus about $20 to $50 of donation. Again, that really depends on how much you've charged in the past, but that's kind of the number or the breakdown we're seeing. A purely virtual event, we're seeing ticket prices from anywhere from 25 bucks all the way to 75 for purely virtual. 25 would be, I just get to tune in and just watch a virtual event, and I'm just sitting on my couch eating my snacks from the kitchen, and that's it. A $75 to $150 virtual ticket would be, I'm sitting at home watching it on my TV, but earlier that day, a gift basket came with a full meal I can enjoy, or a wine and cheese platter that I can enjoy with the virtual event. Again, the cost will be higher when we start to include all of those other elements, but it's also really fun and what we've noticed to be one of the best engagement pieces for virtual events in the past 16 months.
Fantastic. And along that note then, would you consider creating different tiers or offers for donors to engage? You know, potentially, like you're saying, you know, potentially just a viewing versus having all the extras.
Yeah, absolutely. I would 100% recommend doing it. Majority of the organizations we support, they're all doing it as well, and they're finding a ton of success in it. So typically people will have, if it's a purely virtual event, they'll have 2 or 3 ticket options. One is your purely virtual event. It's going to be, like you just said, our lowest ticket price, 25, 30 bucks, whatever it is. Then we have our stay-at-home gala experience, or our virtual gala at home experience, whatever creative names we want to come up with. That's going to be like, yeah, you get the whole swag bag with all the things, and you get a meal or something to enjoy during the event. And then oftentimes we'll see organizations put on a third ticket option, which is still that virtual experience ticket plus another $100 donation, and they just bake it into the ticket price. So same ticket, just more opportunities to give, and then again offering a tax receipt for that additional amount that people are able to give if they go with that ticket option.
Great suggestions, Rebecca. Okay, coming back to online auctions, we have another question there. Is it better to keep the online auction just at the live event, or to keep it going after the event for a period of time?
With live auctions, we recommend having it just in the moment. It builds more excitement and more hype with the live auction. The benefit and the reason we actually all love live auctions is because it's really highly engaged. We're seeing all of our friends put their hands up and say they're going to give, and so pulling that live auction item out and making it a longer experience, we kind of lose some of that magic. So I would recommend, however you do your event, in person, virtual, or something in the middle, keeping the live auction items for just a short period of time. However, I would make sure that you have your silent auction items open 2 to 4 weeks before the event begins. So 2 to 4 weeks before, as people buy their tickets, they're also bidding on silent auction items, so that the day of the event, you know, we've already increased our fundraising potential because people have already started giving, but we can also continue to encourage people to keep participating and build more of that hype and excitement on the day of too.
Great. And you might not have an answer to this, Rebecca, because you know we just might not be there yet. But we've got a question: in a hybrid event, what percentage would we likely see attends in person versus virtual?
Yeah, good question. And I think this number is going to continue to evolve as, I mean, like we said, vaccines are rolling out. It's summertime in Canada, so everybody wants to be outside. And I think as we settle into the fall, things will again continue to evolve. People's comfort levels will change. But right now, what we're seeing with event number 2, our in-person with a live stream audience, you're going to have maybe about 20 to 30% of your attendees will be virtual. With that event, you're really pushing an in-person experience, and you're catering for an in-person experience, which is totally fine. But you'll tend to get less engagement on the live stream component. Still great. 20 to 30% is a big number. With event number 3, which is in person with a remote virtual experience, we actually see that number flipped. So now it tends to be a bit more of an intimate in-person experience with maybe 20% of our donor base there, and about 80% is going to be joining virtually. Again, these numbers are going to be different based on each organization, but typically this is kind of the numbers we're seeing right now.
Great. And on that note, right now, do you have any trends showing which type of the 4 events are most popular?
Yeah, definitely. Right now, and as we think about like the fall of 2021, purely virtual events are the most popular. And that's actually what you guys said at the beginning too, is that's what you're planning. Again, that's what we've been planning for the last 6 months, and it's hard to switch gears last minute. My assumption, and from the people I'm talking to as well, in person with virtual fundraising and in person with a live stream audience are going to be really popular at the beginning of next year, as it's, you know, the first, we're just getting back into it, everybody's out, we can be outside again, and all of those feelings. And then I think we're really going to settle into event number 2 and 3. So those are going to be the 2 that I think really keep going forward. It's right in the middle, engages the most amount of people, and we see the most benefits with those 2 in comparison to a purely in person or purely virtual.
Great. Well, I see we're coming up on time, Rebecca, so I think we're going to end questions there, but I wanted to just throw it back over to you if you had any final comments before we sign off today.
No, definitely. I'll leave it at that. Like I said, I just threw a ton of information at you guys, and so we would love to keep connecting. And so you can connect with me and my team. I think Zoe and Emily will just again throw that demo link in the chat, because at the very least, like I said, it's a really good opportunity to just ask more questions, have that one-on-one conversation or conversation with a couple other people, and hear what others are doing and figure out what you can do for your organizations too. So please take advantage of that. There is a QR code as well as another link on the screen too for the guide, which again will kind of dive deeper into a lot of the things we've just talked about.
Well, that's fantastic, Rebecca. Thank you so much. And I want to give a shout out to Zoe and Emily as well for helping us out in the chat box also. I will just remind everyone that you will receive a follow-up email likely later today with the link to the webinar recording. So of course, also please feel free to share that link with your colleagues. The email will include a survey link that you can fill out with your feedback on today's webinar. And another reminder, the attendance at today's presentation is also eligible for 1 point in the category 1B education of the CFRE International application for initial certification and or recertification. So we'll also include a downloadable tracking sheet in the email that we send out later today so that you can take advantage of that if you're interested. On behalf of Charity Village, I want to thank you again for joining us today. We do have lots more webinars coming up over the next few months. So our next session is on July 29th, and we're going to be discussing trauma-informed leadership and how to lead from a place of resilience. So you can find more information on that in our upcoming webinars at charityvillage.com/webinars. You'll also find all of our past recordings there if you just scroll right down under the upcoming webinars section. Thank you again for taking part in today's webinar, and I wish you all a wonderful rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Bye.